The world is changing. The digital landscape is so vast that I can barely scratch the surface of it in a video, but I'm going to have a crack at tackling a theme which is now, more than ever, taking front and centre as a major issue: the digital divide. Old people, new people, old technologies, new technologies. In 2019, it is no longer an option to stay in the old days. The way things were done before are constantly being upgraded. Everyday essential services like banks, retail stores, insurance providers, and the Australian Tax Office, as well as most major communication, is all revolving around online use. And it has become somewhat of a requirement to be digitally literate and have a strong understanding of how to navigate the web safely and make the most of what it has to offer. A digital divide in technology use persists worldwide. But here in Australia, are we leaving the forgotten older generation behind? And what about internationally? Here in Australia, things like the NBN are forcing change onto our citizens, giving those who may not want change or be comfortable with changing how they do things no option to not have the NBN service. People who are elderly and may have dementia are highly likely to struggle with these forced changes. Unlike the NBN, a rise in smart home adoption is something people are choosing to opt in for. But do smart home devices simplify life or make it more complex? Can people, like the elderly, effectively utilise these technological advancements, or are they getting left behind with traditional tech, whilst younger generations capitalise on these changes? Something most tech companies are including in their products is accessibility features, which allow people who may have a disability that could affect how they use a device to use it more effectively. Features like larger text size, a magnifier, and text-to-speech are often used by users who have vision problems. These features are bridging the digital divides between people with disabilities and other users, allowing everyone to access the same resources and technologies. Another digital divide that tech companies are trying to bridge is the educational inequality that we see in rural communities. Apple has done a lot for this cause by donating iPads to schools across the world to give these students access to the same technologies and strengthen their abilities to make it in the real world. The use of digital technology in education has continued to grow in the past decade, making digital literacy an increasingly important component of success for students. Digital divides often arise out of neglect. It is not that an older person is incapable of using a new device, but more likely they just have not been taught how to use it effectively. Positive aging has allowed many people who may have not been given the opportunity to learn how to use new devices, with places like libraries, phone stores and aged care centres running sessions to teach these people how best to use the devices for their needs. Now, let's look overseas to China, where it seems a neglect for digital literacy may just cost you your trust, your friends, and your livelihoods. China is adopting a social credit rating system, which uses data, surveillance, and other people's opinion on you to create a score for every person in China. This score will open up opportunities for some people and close off many for others. As Ramadan informs us in The Gamification of Trust, the case of China's social credit, China's social credit system is meant to measure and rate trust of citizens. High-scoring individuals will take the place of experienced subject matter influencers and become themselves celebrity endorsers. Whilst this sounds great if you can manage a high score, Ramadan continues that people will gradually unfollow or unfriend other members with low scores to distance themselves from those who are perceived as low-trusting individuals. If you have a strong digital literacy, you will not have many issues integrating with this system in your daily life. However, for many of China's 1.4 billion person population, skills in social media and digital literacy do not come naturally, and presents a predicament where they may be negatively scored in this credit rating system because they are less fluent with how to use new services like this. It is a great concern and is an example of a government forcing change onto its citizens without the ability for them to not partake. It is a concern of many that these citizens will be left behind and become poorer in an already struggling economy. The digital divide is leaving behind those who are already most affected by it. This concept is taking off in popular culture too, with Black Mirror's 2016 episode Nosedive making a commentary about this social credit system, detailing the ways in which we could all be driven mad by becoming self-conscious and self-obsessed with maintaining high scores. If you haven't seen this episode, I highly recommend you watch it, as the similarities between their social media obsessed world and ours are not as distant as one might think. Digital competency is not just important, but absolutely integral in both this Black Mirror episode, but in present day China, and sooner than we think, here in Australia and the rest of the world. Going forward, I think the only ways we can ensure we do not neglect those who need digital competency the most and bridge the digital divides is to continue learning, teaching, and helping out those who may need help. Older people having a tough time navigating online environments should make the most of included accessibility features in their devices. And the younger generations should keep learning and adapting to ensure they don't get left behind in a new digital divide, as future generations push us further along with technology.